Neutron bomb.
Neutron bomb. Right.
Oh, that's the one that does
Yeah, that's right. The
neutron radiation.
At any rate, this causes the cars and everything else to stop, but humans operate perfectly well. It's the inverse. But unfortunately, I knew that as this develops, I can basically cross any frontier I want, and they can't send helicopters after me, airplanes after me, tanks after me. I can make them all stop at quite a decent distance.
Oh my God, that's amazing. But
he's saying, actually off camera, he said, if you were being chased by military tanks and helicopters, this device is very simple. I don't personally know how to build it, but it's highly, highly classified as a weapon because it's apparently very simple to make. It's dangerously simple. And if you pointed it at a tank, an airplane, they would just all melt and fall out of the sky. So we know we have this weapon. It's probably our greatest secret in the arsenal of our military. And so when you see these stories of fireballs coming out of the sky, in fact, this happened to me. I was filming my new film, Quantum Communication, in Sedona, Arizona, and Cloud Swanson had just arrived from MIT. He's an MIT physicist. And as he's getting his briefcase right over his shoulder, I see this psychedelic fireball coming down over Sedona. And it didn't make a sound when it hit. And it turns out the days before that, there was another fireball that came down over Flagstaff. And a father and a son saw the thing hit the ground and didn't make a sound when it hit the ground. And then, 2 days later, I saw some strange lights outside of my window. And I took some pictures on my digital camera and blew them up. And sure enough, it was a UFO. So when I see things like that, I can't think that meteors are all just coming down over Sedona. I mean, the odds of the randomness of that are just illogical. I know, I'm very, very aware of the weapon we have. So the crash retrieval process, the process of retrieving saucers, it's very, very clear that we have been able to get them and actually work on them. And one of the things Boyd told me, and some of this videotape is really long, so I'm not going to show it here. It's going to be in a new documentary I'm working on. He goes into this lengthy conversation about all of him and his buddies who, have worked at Area 51 and acknowledges Bob Lazar. And he basically says it's an underfunded program. The research, a lot of money went into reverse engineering UFO technology, and we can produce anti-gravity, yes. But he starts to talk about the materials that the craft are made of on the periodic table of elements are materials we don't even know how to manufacture ourselves. We don't even know how to do it. But I've been able to get enough information from Boyd Bushman and my presentation last year to build a set of blueprints and get confirmation on my design actually from 2 different sources. And you're about to see those. And it's so conclusively clear when I reveal my greatest secret to you that these blueprints are not just kind of random sketches, that we could actually build this thing and see if it flies. I gave, several years ago, 4 years ago, a set of my blueprints to a very, very high-level university in the United States, which I cannot name, and they took it to one of the top labs in Europe, particle physics research labs, and they apparently gave me play-by-play reports. They built my saucer, and it flew through the roof and blew a hole in the ceiling, very similar to the John Searle's first story, and it flew. And then they eventually built another one which they controlled, and I didn't know whether to believe the story. I mean, I was getting emails, and I was talking to an agent who actually was chasing men in black suits, and here I am in a black suit, being chased by, was it me? It wasn't me, because I wouldn't be here today telling you the truth. But, so now we're going to go inside of the craft. And, Boyd had first told us something very, very simple. He said that they produced anti-gravity as a very simple experiment, which anybody in this room can do. They got really good quality neodymium magnets, very, very high quality. He bought 2 that were $5,000 a piece with a donut hole in the middle, toroidal shape, and they bolt them together. You know how magnets like to push away when the poles are alike? And he forces the poles together and bolts it down and wraps it in a plaster to look like a rock. He drops it off a 60-some-odd-foot tower at Lockheed, revisiting Galileo, and a hammer and a nail would both fall at the same speed, because that's what gravity does. A lighter object does not fall towards gravity any faster than a heavy object. So Boyd's opposing magnetic fields fall slower every time. Since I left the Congress last year, he had Russian scientists confirm the same experiment. And there are people who have done it in Sedona. Very, very simple thing to do. So we know that that is the core of what produces anti-gravity, is slamming, basically fields together. In fact, that's one of the things that Bob Lazar said with element 115. They slammed the fields together and you produced anti-gravity. Well, then Boyd showed, last year you saw it, photographs of winged aircraft where they lowered these huge electromagnets. I mean, they were so heavy, at no plane in the world could fly, and they were literally producing anti-gravity in these classified aircraft. So F-117s that don't make any noise, giant triangular craft, which is what Lockheed builds, not making any noise, are using this system. However, the system they're using is forcing miniature nuclear-powered energy into electromagnets, which are very simple. You can just use neodymium or iron and wrap some wire around them and force a lot of energy into them, was what we were using to produce the anti-gravity. So you would get a lot of radioactivity. In fact, it was interesting because Santiago Yotteria was telling me that the footage you saw last year of the guy in Texas with the little dog in the yard and the UFO came really close and it affected the videotape, that the little dog apparently died or got sick a few days later, and so did the family, from radiation. And the tape was damaged from radiation. That was in Texas. Lockheed Martin is in Texas. The Cash Landrum incident was also in Texas. Radiation burns. Lockheed Martin's all over Texas. And this may shock you, but Boyd Bushman actually told me the Stephenville UFO, the big black triangle now, go back to the incident. How many people know Stephenville? Okay, almost everybody. Was being escorted by Lockheed fighter jets. And you now are aware that we have this weapon. Do you really believe that if we thought that was an alien craft and we were flying F-16s or F-22s anywhere near it, that we wouldn't shoot it down with our beam weapon? Why didn't we? Because it belongs to Lockheed Martin. And if you notice, all of Lockheed Martin's aircraft, their advanced ones, are all black triangles. And now this may sound crazy. If you go to the Phoenix Lights incident, it was a mile-wide triangle, and maybe Stephenville as well, and we'd like to think that's extraterrestrial. But when the triangle over the Phoenix Lights stopped in front of Phoenix in South Mountain, Goodyear, Arizona is right underground, right underneath the craft, and Lockheed Martin is right there. So I believe it's possible the Phoenix Lights UFO actually came from Tooele, Utah, which is where Boyd Bushman says the new Area 51 is, just north of the northern part of the state of Arizona, which is where the first witnesses saw the Phoenix Lights craft. So we've seen enough craft, but when I knew about the opposing magnetic fields, and I also demonstrated how I believe in crop circles, there are blueprints that reveal something very, very similar. Barbara Lamb showed you the clockwise, counterclockwise weaves in the grass, and we know there's clockwise, counterclockwise fields in opposing field magnets. Jeff Willis, years ago, gave me this piece of footage, and a lot of you have seen it, of the flying saucer. May 24th, 2003 and May 24th, 2005, left and right. And I took it into my editing bay, and I noticed, because it's interlaced video, two video frames interlaced like a comb, and it's handheld, two of the frames kind of went jagged on each other, and I saw this double impression. And when I blew it up, if you look at the lower image on the lower left, it's like a ghost. You're seeing through the black dome of the UFO right on the top, and you're seeing into the core of the flying saucer. And this is what it looks like inside, only in a few frames. I know what that means. I know what I'm looking at there. I'm looking at a concave-shaped Tesla coil. You can see the sunlight shining off of the edge of it right there. But you can't see the outer skin of the UFO. You're seeing into the inside. And that is because of the X-rays and the ultraviolet energy coming from the powerful magnetic drives in the center of the craft are giving you a picture of the inside, just in a few video frames. But also, just below the very, very shiny image there, you can actually see down in here a double impression of a wider coil. So narrower coil and wider coil here. So I knew what that meant. I knew that there were two coils interlace with each other, and they were going to produce counter-rotational electromagnetic fields.